welcome to another Brookbanks Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Wakeling, and today I'm delighted to have with me Mark Baldwin, who is Senior Associate Director of the Civil Engineering team here at Brookbanks. How you doing, Mark? You okay?
Yeah, not too bad. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. Today we're going to be talking about Highway's technical approval process. But before we do, Mark, just tell us a bit about yourself and your route here.
So I joined Brookbanks last year, and I spent the last 10 years before that on the client side of the housing development world, mainly with PLCs, doing things from engineering manager to senior development manager, so all things within the technical department. And before that, I was a consultant, doing the civils designs for a great company called CWA in the centre of Birmingham. So yeah, and now find myself on a podcast with your good self, Ben.
Well, just to show this your career path can lead to amazing things. So you're here now. Just that's proof, isn't it? That's
Yeah,
proof.
all those teachers I said I'll never amount to anything.
And now here you are on the Brookbanks podcast. Okay, so today, as I said, we're talking about Highway's technical approval process. For the layperson like me, could you just take us through what the Highway's technical approval process is and the kind of the main elements to it?
Yeah, sure. So I'll try and kind of keep it as broad as possible. But the highway technical approval process is the obtaining of technical compliance or technical approval with the local authority's standards and preferences in relation to the amendments of a new adopted road for Section 278 and a new road or new highway infrastructure for Section 38. It's basically attaining their approval on your proposals, whether that be in existing or proposed highway.
And why do you need to get the local authorities' approval? Presumably, it's because they're adopting it at the end of the construction,
Yeah,
most cases.
yeah, exactly. So, under the Highways Act in 1980, they have a statutory obligation to adopt new roads. So, if you're new housing estate, for example, then they would potentially adopt the roads on site. And then when you're operating within an existing highway ownership boundary, it's called a Section 278. And yeah, it's important that is undertaken because you legally and lawfully can't carry out works on a highway without this agreement in place, which the technical approval process prefixes. So the process is you get the technical approval or technical compliance, and then it forms onto the agreement, which is a legal agreement stating you can work within the highway. Your plans are satisfactory.
Yeah, okay. So Section 278 is for works going onto an existing highway. Section 38 is new highways on a development. And yeah, so the technical approval process is the local authority looking at the specification, looking at the proposals, and basically saying they're happy with the design. They're happy that if it was built, it would be in a position where they could adopt it eventually.
Very much nutshelling it, but on the whole, yes. And the process involves a civils designer, similar to ourselves, producing the pack of information, the designs, along with other sub designs such as street lighting, which we do, luckily, and then also signals, for example. This package of information goes to a local authority. They look at it, they comment on it, they ask questions. It then go through a road safety audit, and there's varying numbers of those and when they happen. Um, and yeah, and then the idea being that eventually yourself, well, the civil engineer and the local highways engineer agree on the scope, and it gets rubber stamped as approved.
And without sounding a bit daft, the road safety audit is, well, what it says on the tin. Then it's an audit of the safety of the road, right?
Yeah, exactly that. So there's usually one carried out at the start of kind of the transport and assessment of the scheme, where they look at how a new site is going to interact with the existing highway infrastructure. And then, yeah, the one that we would naturally get involved a little bit more in as civil engineers is the road safety audit 2, which looks at the detail of speeds and radiuses and obstructions, and just tries to identify any potential hazards in the designs. It's usually carried out by a third party company or contractor who will go out, look at the site, look at the designs, and then they again approve it or comment on it, for us civils to comment back on it.
So presumably then, technical approvals would be needed. Well, so you tell me, when are they needed in the kind of construction process? I'm assuming before the construction happens, right?
It's a good question. So in an ideal world, so it's section 278 first, which is the one of an adopted highway, um, that can't be physically carried out until you have that agreement in place. So depending on the scheme and on the build route, and the access arrangements, this would ideally be needed prior to construction starting. Now, that doesn't happen in truth, given the timescales from when someone gets planning application in and approved to when they want to start on site. There's very little chance that a 278 is agreement is in place for when they start on site. However, my claim to fame is I have had a few where we've managed to get in early and do that. But yeah, that's ideally when you need the 278. Before usually it kicks off during the build process. I think for all developers and to manage their risk and their WIP, it would be at the start of the project to be in and they're out the way then. The Section 38 would be needed before the start on site, the agreement, but then the works don't take place until they're on site. But yeah, both of which are ideally needed before start on site, and ideally even better would be before tendering.
Yeah, so there's a few bits there. You mentioned ideally a few times. I should imagine then that some developers, and in both of our experience, I'm sure we've had sites in the past when we've worked for house builders where workers commence certainly on section 38 before technical approval, which is a risk that everyone is kind of eyes open to. Does that happen much on section 278? And what are the risks, I suppose, for developers who decide to crack on without technical approval?
Yes, it's a good question. Obviously, we were both client side for a long time and saw and saw the way the world works in that sense. In terms of risk, the Section 38, which is the on-site highways, there is a risk associated with starting on site prior to the technical approval. However, that risk can be mitigated by early involvement with the ground worker, by early involvement with the highways authority, and also the level of works that is started to. So, for example, if the scheme has a planning approved or a outline approved highway scheme that defines the horizontal alignment, there's no harm in scraping it, for example, because you don't need technical approval for that. But there is still a risk that obviously if you start and you do carry out works, that by the time the process is finished on the technical approval, that these lines have changed and the contractor and the client have abortive cost. This risk is managed internally in most developers with the technical and commercial team and the build teams to try and determine when best to start things and whether to wait. The reality is that in most times developers will start the 38 right up till base course before technical approval is reached. But again, it all does depend on the site. On the section 278, um, they lawfully and legally can't start works in the highway until the agreement is signed. And for the agreement to be signed, the technical approval is needed. Um, so in essence, sometimes what happens is what's called a section 184, where it's like a temporary access arrangement is sought, or if there's an existing access, even better. This is usually dealt with and handled through the planning process with planning conditions such as 278 pre-commencement and preoccupation. And again, there's lots of avenues of where risk is mitigated on both of those and can be thought through.
I suppose, yeah, I mean, thinking again back to developer days, you've spent a load of money on a piece of land. You want to get started, you want to get going, you want to build houses and sell them. So there's definitely been times where works have proceeded at risk, but that is the risk as you've outlined. Designs might change, costs might change. If you tender a civils package on a set of drawings that haven't been technically approved, that risk of them then changing is greater, and then you get into kind of variations and compensation events and all that good stuff. So in an ideal world, I presume, if me and you were to band up and make a house builder to build, make create a new developer, we would go out and buy a bit of land, and we'd factor in enough time pre-commencement to get the technical approvals done. Just before we go on to the timing side of things, because I know that's a kind of a real big challenge for various parties in the whole process. Where do you find, in your experience, that technical approval submissions often kind of fall down, or they get rejected, or they get queried heavily? Is it always on the same things? Are there specific things that developers should be mindful of when pulling together a technical approval?
Oh, definitely. There's so many ways to catalyze the process. Some of them are quite easy wins. So early engagement with the highways team throughout the planning is key, and that usually depends on relationships built with the local highways authorities. But if a lot of the 278 and 38 fundamental issues like alignment and etc. can be dealt with in the planning process, that then reduces the time of the technical approval. Um, so yeah, there's and it's like early involvement with the ground worker is also key, because they'll be the guys building it or the people building it. So yeah, early involvement with those.
They're the experts, really.
Yeah.
It was identifying the main risks, the key areas that always fall down,
Yeah, so again, a robust design pack, one that has been clearly thought through, clearly identifies the existing services, existing topography, the surroundings, a very robust pack that addresses the many comments as possible prior to them being asked. That can be backed up obviously by road safety audits, by the travel assessment. Um, Lots of documents and lots of work can be done to mitigate the length and the challenges throughout the technical process.
and then you mentioned about time delays earlier, and again, in our experience, that's a real big area. So what kind of time delays do developers often see when trying to get technical approval?
All approvals are dependent on the site and the constraints, but naturally the time from a submission to a TA can be anything from 3 to 6 months. That's on most sites, and then on the more complex ones, obviously it can take years. And then on the not simpler, but the better delivered and the simpler ones, it can be quick. I know at Brookbanks we've had one done in a day, a 278, where we submitted the most perfect pack and they've approved it. And similarly, I've had a few Phoenix Street in West Brom where it was done way before landing on site. And that was the hard work put in by the civils team and the client and the developer to get all the information, to get all the surveys, to get all the conversations had. So when it was submitted, there's no kind of stones unturned. But then we've also had sites where a previous uh, employer of ours had a site sat empty because it was a national highway scheme that had a preoccupation condition on the 278. 278 wasn't even approved, so this site was built and sat empty for 18 months, if not more. So yeah, so the risk is huge. So obviously on that site it was insane the level of financial damages that were sought and the issues they had. But when done well, the risk is minimal, and it's about early conversations, early transparency, or transparency throughout, um, and making sure that a fully robust design is thought of and done early and got in early. Um, yeah,
So it's all about getting in early, developing those relationships, and then working through those good relationships to get the questions answered early, get the pack in. I mean, if I was to put my local authority hat on, then and I get a technical approval submission in, what are the key things that are driving that 3 to 6 month or 3 to 9 month delay? Is it resourcing on my side as the local authority? Is it incomplete information? I should imagine it's a mixture of most things.
I think you're spot on. I think, unfortunately, most government positions are obviously struggling funding wise and staffing. So, there'd be a staffing issue on their side and enough engineers to look at it. But I think again, I've seen some lengthy ones where you look back at the submission and the initial submission wasn't great. They didn't have existing utility information. They didn't have all the topographical information. The design was done um, based on incomplete information, and then the design wasn't great. So then that drags out even more. So yeah, having a full suite of information and sitting down and doing a page turning exercise on the designs with the local highway authority engineer is something I've done several times and works really well. You go a bit old school. You take a printed off pack to their offices or wherever, and you sit down and you go through it, you red pen it together, and that's resulted for me a few times in 278 agreements being completed in a matter of weeks. And like you say, it helps build the relationship, and then you start to learn what the styles and the demands or desires of the local authority really are. So yeah, there's from the local authority side, I think having the resources to look at it, but then also having a robust pack delivered that's been thought out, and then also been well presented, um, is usually the best thing to happen.
Makes you wonder why, and we live in an imperfect world. It makes you wonder why a lot of technical approvals are submitted without the right information and without those checks having been done. And I mean, it'd be good to get your thoughts on this, but I presume it's just purely because everyone on the developer side and local authority side, but specifically developer side in this instance, is just going hell for leather. They just want to build, they want to get on site, and so they're pulling together all the information they can and just sending it in, maybe on the hopes that it just somehow manages to get through. Or am I being unfair on developers, do you think? Am I being a bit mean?
No, I think you're right. I think a perfect developer world is everyone has to be a little bit uncomfortable. I think, and I think on the developer side, where obviously we've both spent a long time, the targets are set there for certain reasons, and the deadlines are there for certain reasons as well. And one of those deadlines will be the 278 technical approval. And I've sat on technical teams where the first meeting about the scheme, the technical approval deadline is a couple of weeks after, and you literally have never seen this site before. So yeah, sometimes there is a bit of reality check needed, I think, on the developer side. But I fully appreciate to achieve high, you have to aim high. So you have to drive it. We drive it, we push it, as well as the developer to make sure that those technical approvals are done well and they're done in a timely manner.
Well,
Yeah.
this is it then. It's time for the sales pitch, Mark. So, in your role as Brookbanks, and I'm putting you on the spot because obviously I'm at Brookbanks as well. What can we do to help support developers, local authorities, investors to make sure the technical approval process is as smooth as possible?
Well, I think I've mentioned it a few times now, but several of us have worked on the client side for many years, um, and we all feel I don't use the word pain, but the challenges of the technical approval process. So I think the first thing is to say we get it, we understand the challenges and the deadlines and the difficulties. So we've therefore got a unique expertise in that we can attack it from with our developer hat on, and we can help the developer overcome the initial hurdles if we're engaged early, if we're given chance to get going on the scheme early doors and start engaging with the planners and the other highway associated team members, then yeah, we can deliver robust and cost effective and programmed 278 designs, 38 designs, for when the client needs. It takes that forethought of the developer to get us involved and to get us appointed, and to tap into our expertise, which I honestly believe myself and a lot of the civils team do have, and then the wider Brookbanks team in commercial and project and development management, and the LDC team, we can all lean on each other to deliver these 278s well, and get the speedy results that the client wants, which which we,
Yes.
we- which we do on a regular basis. I know a lot of our clients are very pleased with how we operate within the technical approval process.
So yeah, it's important that a full pack is submitted. We also have got a team who deal with external lighting, which is quite an important part on the designs and getting technical approval. Um, is there anything else that we provide that we can talk about?
Yeah, obviously across the company, there are several departments that are very intertwined, and we can all lean on each other. Obviously, we have a structures team that do great work. So any kind of AIP or structures work that is needed within a 278, we can lean directly on those and engage with those guys. And then yeah, so many people in the business have got such a vast expertise but vast wealth of expertise that yeah, they can all be lent on, and called upon to help deliver the 278 and the 38s promptly.
Okay then, brilliant. So as we come to a close then, if you were a developer or if you belonged to a developer and you were listening to this, what would be the kind of two or three things that you would recommend that they do, other than obviously getting in touch with us, but what would be the 2 or 3 things that you recommend that they do after this podcast to make sure that their next technical approval process goes pretty smoothly? And we'll appreciate we'll be recapping some stuff
Yeah,
you've already said.
I think it's a really good question. I think the experience I've had, the results, the good result, 278 and 38 have always been fact finding or surveys. So whether it's subscans, whether it's topographical, whether it's existing utilities, gather as much information about the area, the site, the existing constraints as humanly possible, and as early as possible. So as soon as, in my experience, as soon as we knew a site was looking likely, I was often given the green light to go and spend a bit of money on surveys and find out what's in the ground and around the 278, for example. That'd be number one. I think just get as much information as possible, and obviously we can facilitate that as well. If capacity is an issue within the developers, our DM team are great at that. They can arrange it all, get it all sorted out. A transport assessment is obviously needed for planning anyway, but early engagement with us on this, or anyone on this, would be brilliant as well, because that sets out the framework for the 278 or 38 works. And then again, early engagement with ourselves, just to start getting designs worked up, start thinking about the program of it all, when the client's deadlines are, and yeah, just early engagement is probably number two. So fact finding number one, early engagement with us, I think, throughout the entire process, whether it's transport assessments, planning, um, or then onto the detailed design of the 278. Yeah, just having clear and transparent, conversations with each other all the time. I think communication's key on, in our field of work, but especially on tight deadlines and when we're up against it.
Yeah, and you mentioned a couple of times about early contractor involvement as well. I think that's really, really important. They're the experts. They're literally the boots on the ground.
Yeah.
They'll be able to look at drawings. Not saying that any of your drawings are ever wrong, Mark, but they'll be able to look at drawings and pick out bits that don't quite work or specs that aren't quite right, and give their advice as well.
They usually have a closer relationship with the on-site engineer than we ever will. So they've got a lessons learnt book that is huge and can be called upon. So yeah, definitely. There's usually a contractor in mind, isn't there, for a site? I think we've learned that there's usually a contractor preferred early on, or one or two. So the earlier engagement, the better.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Mark. You've got to head off back to Exeter now, so that is quite the drive. But if anyone wants to get in touch with you to find out a little bit more, what's the best way of contacting you?
But to be honest, I'm a little bit more old school. I think I'm phone. Yeah, emails are just another thing on the screen on there. So give me a call. I'm sure my number can be attached to this, or drop me an email if need be, and we can talk about 278s, 38s, and even 104s, which we didn't get onto, which is another technical approval for the drainage networks. But yeah, we can talk shop and see how we can help.
Brilliant. And it's mark.baldwin@brookbanks.com,
That's it.
I presume.
Yep.
Section 104s we didn't talk about. That's a whole other kettle of fish. Maybe another podcast. We'll
Yeah,
have to get you back on.
yeah, that's the sequel.
And the sequel to Section 38, 278, Section 104s.
Yeah,
And like most sequels, hopefully it will be better than
it'll
this
be
one.
awful.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Mark. Again, thank you everybody for listening. If you wanted to get in touch with us, just head over to brookbanks.com and you can get in touch with us through that, and we can talk till the cows come home about Section 38, 278, and next time Section 104s. But until then, we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Ben. See you later.